I call to order the Mental Health Recovery Services Board Trustee meeting for January 20th, 2026. We begin, please, with the roll call.
Okay, Ms. Bell.
Present.
Mr. Albright.
Here.
Mr. Arnold. Ms. Banks. Mr. Brown. Ms. Carter. Ms. Crockett.
Here.
Dr. Elhai. Ms. Friedman.
Here.
Reverend Gordon.
Here.
Ms. Harding. Ms. Howe.
Here.
Mr. Lambert. Ms. Mendoza Locke. Mr. Ortley.
Here.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Here.
Mr. Salas.
Here.
Major White.
We'll move on then to recognition of visitors. If we could start with you, Mr. Arnold, please. Tina Mason, board staff. Thank you, welcome. We'll move on to determination of items to be removed from the consent agenda. And I want to make note that item 6E, Lucas County Family and Children First Council, will be removed from the consent agenda. Does anyone want 6A, the treasurer's report, removed? 6B, Lucas County Guardianship Services Board half-year allocation. 6C, City of Toledo ARPA funds extension. 6D, Health Officer designation. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I omitted the, we want to go back and have those
Yeah.
approved, but not on consent.
No, you
agenda.
can keep them on consent, just see if they want to remove them from the consent, because they are on consent right now.
Oh, okay. My bad. Okay, let's go back to item 5, the trustee meeting minutes for December 11th, 2025. Would anyone like those removed from the consent agenda? Those remain on, and then the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Is there any discussion? Did you do a roll call?
Mr. Salas.
Yes. Here.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Yes.
Mr. Ortley.
Yes.
Ms. Howe.
Yes.
Reverend Gordon.
Yes.
Ms. Friedman.
Yes.
Dr. Elhai. Ms. Crockett.
Yes.
Mr. Albright.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries. Then if we'll begin, please, with 6E, Scott.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm going to keep this fairly short. We had a pretty robust discussion related to the Lucas County Family and Children's First Council Pooled Funds and Parent Advisory Leadership Support Program allocation. If you recall, at that time, the staff recommended a $15,000 allocation. That recommendation was changed via board recommendation to $23,696. However, the resolution, the motion that was printed in your packet came up $3 shy at $23,693. So we just simply needed to point out that the resolution was inaccurate and the real total is $23,696. That is on the last page, the last motion.
So on page 13.
It's 13, that should be a 696, not 693. These $3 are important because it would drive Jenny crazy trying to balance.
Okay, are there any questions for Scott? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion. Okay, and that motion will reflect the $23,696.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Wendy, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Albright,
Yes.
Ms. Crockett,
Yes.
Dr. Elhai. Yes. Ms. Friedman,
Yes.
Reverend Gordon,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Ortley,
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Mr. Salas.
Yes.
Motion
Want to share a
carries.
few.
And then we'll move on to item 7 on our agenda. That's the director's report. Scott?
Yep, I'm sharing a few things with folks. That pertains to my first, I guess, comments. I think it's important that when we get some positive feedback from the community on things that the board has done in the past, that we share that with the trustees. That did occur regarding the board's allocation of $49,000 for emergency food assistance. If you remember that, when SNAP was due to shut down, and we provided that emergency assistance to our community providers. So we wanted to just provide a brief summary of the impacts. 182 individuals, 113 families received food assistance. They sent a number of thank you notes and pictures and cards, and I've passed those around for you guys to read and see. And we will, I'll just encourage you to kind of keep looking at those as I go through the rest of my report. So feel free to share with folks. I'm not gonna say too much more about the food assistance. All the agencies, but for one, did accept our donation and then distributed. They rapidly got that food out, either in gift card or direct purchase of food. But it was very well received from our community providers, and very thankful that we were able to provide that assistance to them. I also wanted to provide you a strategic planning update. Thanks for those of you who provided the feedback on the draft goals. As a result, the statements were revised. One was combined and one was eliminated. So we took your input to heart and merged one, eliminated one. So we're down to 4 now. From there, the board staff worked on what we call RACI plans. RACI stands for Responsibility, Accountability, Consultation, and Information, or Informed. Essentially, who does what? Or I guess it'd be who needs to be involved. The next step would be a work plan on who does what. The final draft plan is, the plan is to present that final draft at our next P&O meeting, which is February 3rd. That presentation will be virtual by the consultants for your consideration, input, and if you so are inclined, recommendation of approval. If a motion doesn't come out of P&O for the strategic plan, we'll do the same thing again at the board meeting on what would be the 17th. Taking in whatever input we get from any substantive input, that is. If it's, formatting, or if it's not a substantive change to the priorities of the work plan, the documents, things like that, we can go ahead and approve that, subject to those changes. But if there's substantive changes, my guess is you're gonna wanna see that again, and then do final approval at our trustee meeting, which would be on the 17th. We've heard you loud and clear that you wanna have a prioritization discussion. And we've already started to make inroads into making that happen. I'm negotiating currently with a group out of Virginia that does this work with other boards around Ohio. They're very familiar with the board structures, our statutes, our mandates. And basically, I would consider them a sole source of working with boards to help them identify not only priority services and populations, but then how do their funding mechanisms align to those structures. So it's one thing to say we prioritize X. But then how do we show that we prioritize that through our funding? And how do we then monitor that, and what data are we collecting? All of that is connected into this process, and we hope to begin the initiation of that process sometime to be completed by the end of August. So we're working hard on that. And it won't cost us, I won't be asking you for additional funding. We're gonna take the amount out of our equity and action plan. And it's under $25,000, so that I have the ability to directly enter into contracts. In fact, it's $15,000, which I think is very reasonable for what we are going to be doing with that. You may have heard that there was a little bit of a hiccup in this federal funding cycle last week. Sending shock waves throughout the country, not just in Lucas County. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, when I say abruptly, I mean abruptly. I mean at 10 o'clock at night on a Wednesday, agencies received an email saying X grant is rescinded. You may not have any expenses beyond today applied to that grant. And essentially they were shut down. This impacted prevention services, it impacted housing supports, it impacted residential treatment services for substance use disorders. And it impacted training of our emergency medical staff in rural areas related to related to best practices around intervention strategies related to behavioral health. So in all, it was about $2.3 million that was abruptly ceased. And then the advocacy took over. And there was a pretty strong national outcry. And it wasn't, it was very fast. I would almost say it was very furious. A lot of our legislators were contacted and were appalled by the process as well. And then less than 24 hours after that funding was ceased, it was turned back on. So, pardon me? Samsung, yes.
Making sure I'm following, yeah.
So, this on again, off again, on again, I guess it would have been, is very destabilizing to our system. While we don't fund those entities directly, they contributed to the success of our system and success of those individuals. And those individuals, they read and watch the news as well. So they know what's going on. And for them to have the anxiety of having to go through that, is not something we don't want that distraction for those folks. Additionally, you have employees that are associated with these contracts that are not only trying to manage the patients that they're dealing with or the services that they're dealing with to figure out what to do with them, but they are smart enough to understand that their employment might be jeopardized as well. So you have that added anxiety. These things are just manufactured, disasters that honestly have no place in a public health arena like ours. But unfortunately, I don't think that we've heard the end of this. And so I am encouraging all of our providers, or anyone for that matter, that has a state or federal grant, because some of the federal funds flow through the state were impacted as well, that flowed to us, not us directly, but agencies, other agencies. They need to have a written contingency plan on, what happens the next time? What would you do upon immediate termination of this funding? What would you do if you're given a 30 days notice? What would you do if you're given a 60 days notice? I think they definitely need to have these strategies in place. The board, as a general rule, typically don't pick up funding that is taken back by other funding bodies.
Do they have the resources to have a contingency plan?
Well, the contingency, what do you do with the patients? So they're not gonna have the resources to pull the money out of their pocket, but they need to have a strategy for what happens to the patients. Do they drop to a lower level of care? Where can they be moved if that's the case? Who else can provide that service? What other prevention strategy might be deployed? Is there other programs and services that might be available, maybe outside of their organization, that they can connect to? Those are the things that they need to consider and have it written down, so if and when this happens again, they can spend their time, I won't say proactively, because proactive, they can spend their time focusing on the action versus the trauma of hearing it and then having to figure out what to do and process all that in the same place. So yeah, there's no replacing the money. I mean, we don't have $2.3 million to push at it. There's a reason we're doing the prioritization of funding for services and populations. And I'm not saying that wouldn't fall into this priority. I'm just saying automatically, in general, in terms speaking,
Sure.
organizations that have come to us and said, hey, we've lost our funding, they cut this or cut that, we usually don't entertain that conversation here. Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell by the ones that were cut, what they're zeroing in on, what type of care?
It was
Or
all
just
across the
all?
board. It was prevention, it was residential services, it was housing support. It was 2,800 grants across the nation at about $8 billion.
I was up texting all night long, and I went to bed, and I got up in the morning, and I thought, I pulled up my phone, my God, they changed their mind after I spent all those hours ranting and raving.
There was a lot of that as well, right? I mean, we all did the same thing. And thank you for, taking the time to contact folks. I'm sure we were contacting a lot of the same people, and, we're a little insulated from it because it didn't impact us, but it impacts our provider network,
Sure.
and therefore it impacts us.
Right.
So,
On a side note, I'm chairing the Government Relations Committee as part of my representation to the Continuum of Care, Home for Everyone Continuum of Care. And we've been really active. We've met with just about every elected official except Marino. Just throwing that out there. Told our story, and primarily, from the mental health perspective. Because if you aren't challenged now with mental wellness, you're going to be if you're impacted by these experiences. So that's and it's been interesting, because every time we've talked to an elected official, we've gotten a different perspective on stuff. But just know that not only are we advocating, through our own system, there are other systems that are advocating for mental wellness.
And I hope you're,
Receptive to your voice.
Yes. Even what individuals you wouldn't think would be, they definitely were, we talked about, what happens, right? And we've given, real life examples. One of them would be, I'm a mother of 3, all of a sudden I lose my housing, I lose my care. What do? I live in my car, I go under radar because I don't want to lose my children, and we just talked what that day would look like for me as a mom. And, I did first person. And it was like, whoa. It kind of shifted them because I think everybody has a stereotype possibly in their mind of what they think of when they think of mental wellness and when they think of homelessness and in our unhoused. And so I was able to like just tell a real life story. It wasn't my own, but it was one I knew of, where a mom of 3 is hiding in their car. Being very careful because she got 3 babies. She don't want I said, if you could think of it, they're her emotional support. They're her reason. They're her everything. And
She theirs.
she theirs.
I would encourage that your agency board would have you encourage others to do the same.
We have, we instituted a, how do I say this, an email that goes out to everybody, on behalf of the Government Relations Committee, call here's your list of people here, that, we just keep working with it, and we're working with Co-Ohio too, which is a really pretty strong agency themselves. And they're really, and we've introduced another part of it is if you look at it through the eyes of business, just, if you don't, if you're not a humanitarian, if you just look at it through you're running a business and your employees don't have the emotional support that they need and the medicines that they need in order to show up to work. We're already in a worker shortage, and the impact on the business community as a whole. It's gonna, and then Lucas County, what happens, in Wood County, what happens. Trickle down effect of if you don't have people to supply the services that you sell, then what are you gonna do? You don't have somebody to stock your shelves, you don't have somebody to clean your buildings, you don't have, it goes on and on and on. And so we also discussed that and the impact of the business on the business community this would be.
Yeah, I appreciate that you used the word destabilizing, because one of the things that I've noticed, my clients were not directly affected by this, but they saw it on the news. And so behaviors began, anxiety went up, same thing happened with the SNAP freeze, right? Even if it's not directly affecting you then, it really does take a toll on the mental health of the system.
It does.
I would add the word regression also, because a lot of times, I know in our case, clients were destabilized, and then the work that we've done to get them to the stabilization,
Sure.
now we're going backwards, starting at a place that, it just makes it difficult all the way across the board. And there's fear that caused so much fear, and it's not a direct impact on my organization, but it caused fear for outside services and referrals that we need. So it was definitely, it's
Challenging couple of weeks, that's for sure.
So, yeah, so thank you for leading into my next bullet point. I think this might have been the thing that maybe started it all. No, I guess it was SNAP that started it all, right? Off again, on again. Then we had the HUD Continuum of Care Notice of Financial Opportunity that I talked about in my last director's report. So this isn't an on again or off again, on again, as much as it's an off again and you know how like when it's really, really cold out like it is today and you're advised to turn the water spigot on so it drips, so you don't ice up? That's kind of where we're at with the HUD COC NOFO. So there was a, as we anticipated, there was, if you remember, on December 19th, HUD issued a NOFO that essentially reprioritized transitional housing away from housing first and capped your renewal amounts for permanent supportive housing at 30% down from 90%. So a 60% difference. Lucas County, it was $2 million, $3 million?
$3 million.
$3 million impacted 700 people. Most of those individuals are gonna be in the behavioral health realm.
237 were children.
237 were children, yeah. So as we anticipated, a injunction was filed. The U.S. District Court of Rhode Island ordered HUD to take all necessary steps to process eligible renewals for fiscal year 25. But stopped short of ordering funding or granting of the specific awards. So they said basically, the way I interpret this, we're gonna start the process of the paperwork, the trickle, the opening of the spigot. But we're not gonna turn it on so that you can get a drink of water. We're not gonna grant your funding, and you're not gonna get an award notice.
It's the most frustrating thing.
The portal to enter in the renewal applications opened on January 9th. It'll close on February 9th. And HUD has already stated that if this order is lifted, they will go back to the December 19th original NOFO. So we don't really know where this is all gonna go, but it ain't nearly done. As Senna has indicated, there's a lot of advocacy work continuing, not just in our community, but across the nation. Our homelessness board was actually identified in a national, an NPR newsletter or advocacy alert for the work that they were doing. Congratulations. Julie Embry, who's the CEO of the Toledo Lucas County Homelessness Board, is doing a phenomenal job of attempting to manage this as best you can. But in the end, I think we are going to see some significant changes. And if you saw any of the interviews that I did for Channel 11 around the SAMHSA grant stuff, I am making the comment, we understand that priorities change, and we understand that that is just a reality of life. But we need time to transition to those new priorities. So it's not helpful when you immediately cut off these items or immediately change. Transition is what it is. I mean, we do this all the time. Our agencies do it all the time. We can figure that out.
Transition is.
Just can't stop it and cause those kinds of turbulence, manufactured disasters in our communities, because that's exactly what's gonna happen. So we don't know where the HUD NOFO is gonna end up. Hopefully it'll be a permanent injunction and they'll live, they'll fund as recommended through 2025, but make no mistake, 26 and 27 is gonna be a new prioritization. So it's delaying what I would likely believe is inevitable. Maybe there'll be a transition period, maybe somebody will see the light, but we don't know right now.
We're moving forward.
Mhm.
I'm on the Citizens Review Committee for those emergency shelter funds. So we're gonna move forward and do what we would normally do and just be prepared for whatever comes our way.
Yeah, that's all you can do.
So,
Those contingency plans might be coming in order. Yes, ma'am.
How many people so far have lost their houses? With the trickle?
we are not 100% sure of those numbers. To be transparent with you, we have our own, I think we can all feel like, oh, we know this or we know that, but there's no official number yet, because nobody's actually come forward and really said, oh, I lost my house because of the funding, but we know that that's coming.
So, and we can ask those who might know. I mean, Julie from
Julie might know,
homeless,
right.
the HMIS system tracks entry and discharge
Yeah.
and gives reason for discharge. So they can identify if there's been a significant change. I think,
The one thing we do know is the huge uptick in skilled facilities releasing their patients. I believe Cherry Street Mission in the 55+ range is up by 30%. So we're seeing a lot of our senior citizens, which we're advocating for them as well, are being discharged at a pretty rapid rate. The difficult part with them is a lot of them need medical care. They're not able to live on their own. That's why they were living in a skilled facility. And their challenges is, many of you know, that they have to dissolve all of their properties and earnings and everything sometimes to go into these facilities. So they dissolve everything and then all of a sudden they're getting discharged and they have nothing to go on. So it's been the last couple of months of a lot of hard, furious work going on because we're advocating for more than just one area, you know, it's humanity of our community that we're advocating for across the board.
Sounds so inhumane.
I know, like, what's the communication from like our governor and?
so I will talk about the SAMHSA grants. I'm not aware that the governor weighed in on the HUD phone. The Ohio Department of Behavioral Health was impacted by the SAMHSA grant cuts as well. So they, as you can imagine, they're a much larger machine, right? So they have all these different grants and funding sources coming in. They knew they were impacted. I have never heard a dollar amount that they were impacted by, but they were, I know that they were in communication with our state association and others about advocacy. And of course, they would never do that without the governor. They typically would not step out of that. So my guess is that at least on the SAMHSA side of things, he was probably fairly supportive of rescinding those cuts. I wouldn't know if that is because of the way they happen or because of, you know, believing in the prioritization. That's not, I think that's inconsequential to it because, you know, we understand that, again, priorities shift, priorities change. Our system is well adept at managing that change if we can get a runway to manage that change. Doing it on day one, I think the governor understands that that is destabilizing to people. So,
Yeah, to strong, you know, mentioned, it's these things that I mean, if you're hearing about your grandmother, you know, what is that, you know, again, I tried to turn it, depending on who I was speaking to, I tried to turn it into a business proposition. You know, what happens when I have to quit my job to go home and take care of my mom? You know, so I tried to look at it from very different perspectives, depending on who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
We as a committee we're talking to, because I'm not the only one. when we go and meet with them, we take as many people with us as we can so
Yeah.
that they see
Sure.
a group of people that are diverse and we're all caring and we're all there and we wanna hear, you know, what are you gonna do about it? What's your role in this
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Because this really has no party lines or anything, it's affecting everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. One of the things that the elected officials are really advocating for us to do is to host a press conference and to bring everybody together to be at this press conference and to have the press conference be nothing but the testimonials of the impact.
Sure.
And whatnot. We're, you know, of course, we're weighing what's the best way to do that and is that the best way and we love the idea of it, but we also know that we have to be careful when we go to the press because the last thing we wanna do is induce panic. Northwest Ohio at the same time, you know. So there's a lot of smart minds sitting around this committee. It's a committee of about 21 people. Those who've worked with me before know that when I put a committee together, I try and bring as many different voices to the table as possible.
Okay, not quite done yet. So you may recall that I informed you that our board was the lead applicant for a regional adult mobile crisis application from the Department of Behavioral Health. That request was for $11.7 million to cover the adult mobile crisis in 23 counties in Northwest Ohio. Well, we received tentative notice of an award for $2.5 million.
Wow.
With the ability to dramatically change our proposal, provided we met certain criteria. So mind you, we asked for 11.7, 23 counties, 10 different boards involved. We got 2.5 million. And they said, you don't have to have all the counties anymore, but you have to stick to the model, which was a clinicians-led model with peer supporter team. You have to have more than one board involved. And you have to have contiguous counties represented. So you can't pick and choose throughout. They all have to share a border. As you can imagine, scaling back an application from 11.7 to 2.5 is not an easy thing to do. Especially when you have 10, well, I guess it'd be 9 others like me that have a say in how that should occur. The ultimate goal is, I think it's clear they didn't have enough money to do what they wanted to do across the state, which was expand mobile crisis. The ultimate goal has been, I guess, maybe recommunicated that it's about collecting data to justify a statewide initiation of one or both of the models that were selected. They actually funded 2 of these projects. The Northwest Collaborative, us as the lead, got 1 for $2.5 million. We will be testing out whoever participates, whatever counties participate, the clinician-led and peer supporter model. Southwest Collaborative, which is led by Hamilton as the lead for this application, got $2.5 million. And they will be testing the law enforcement clinician co-responder with a peer support. So the idea is to collect the data to either prove or disprove the models and make recommendations on how this would go statewide. And I would imagine it would inform not just what the model needs to look like, but also administrative rules around certification of crisis services, adult mobile crisis, that would ultimately be the precursor to a Medicaid rate for crisis services. All of that has to be done first before they can say, I want to pay you $200 an hour for adult mobile crisis or whatever they would do. So Frankly, I don't know how this will impact Lucas County or if it will impact Lucas County. I think ultimately, in the end, it will probably end up impacting us. I just don't know if we will be taking money, if it's worth us taking money, if we do, what will we get out of it? I think there's a lot of conversations that my peers and I need to have before we say we're gonna do X, Y, and Z. I gotta redo the whole proposal and scale it back to the 2.5, which we can do once we have a plan. Just as a reminder, there's 5 areas in this 5 counties within this 23 county region who does not have adult mobile crisis services now. We have a fully functioning, high-level adult mobile crisis system. We've been encouraged to include both those communities who currently have a system in place and those who do not in some way, shape, or form, but we don't have to include everybody. Because they want the data. They need the data to inform them, and I think if we focused on just the 5 counties who don't currently have this service, the data will come eventually, but it's in smaller communities where it might not be the numbers might not be there. So a lot more to go. I guess it's good news. Frankly, boards are the only ones who can pull something like this off. And it's great that the State Department recognized that. We've been advocating that if they wanted to do something like this, they should just work with the boards and inform us on what they want to do. Now, obviously, we would have wanted a lot more money, but given the amount, we are in the best position as boards to carry out this task as opposed to anyone else in our community, a provider or consultant or anybody like that. So we're up for the challenge, but I just don't know right now how that will.
When is it due?
I asked for 30 days. I asked, give me 30 days, because I gotta get 9 other board directors in a room together. We gotta make a decision, and ultimately the decision is ours, because we are the lead. But out of respect of our peers, who all contributed for a grant writer to write this grant, we need to follow a process.
Yeah.
So we work very well together. I've spoken many times about how well we work together as a collaborative. This one very well could challenge our relationships, but we'll do our best not to let that occur. So it's a 1-year application. So they want to, they want to. So if you're an existing model, just kind of play this out. Okay, so if you're an existing model, let's pick on Zeph. We're not picking on Zeph. Let's use Zeph. I looked into the camera because I know they're watching. They have a clinician-led and qualified behavioral health supporter, QBHS or QBA. So it's specialists. It's not a peer supporter. Now, many of those are peers, they just don't have the designation as peer support. If we were to involve them, they would have to change their current 8-team models, because they have 8 teams, that model to the peer supporter. And they would have to commit to data collection, which we do pretty robust data collection now, so it might not be that big of a stretch for them on this. And then we would have to work mutual aid across county lines to the extent that that makes sense. And we would have to start to transition to 988. We have a relationship with 988 now, but a mandate of the grant is that you must take your calls through 988, and kind of, they don't say it, but they really infer, get rid of these local county lines for adult mobile crisis services. That's already occurring on the youth mobile crisis, so I'm not sure that that's too big a stretch. So what's that worth to a community like ours? Could you get it done for 50,000? I don't know. 75? I don't know. That's the conversation that needs to occur. And then you start to balance, is it worth it for us to be involved? And then, of course, if we're involved, then one of our contiguous counties has to be involved too. What's the downside of that? I don't think the funding is the downside, the lack of funding. I think the transition will take some time, so that certainly might have some concerns. I think it's the lack of opportunity to lead the state in developing an adult mobile crisis model. And you can't, like I told the state, I said, I recognize, we can't come to Columbus and say, you need to work through the boards, you need to do this, we need to be your partners when you do this. And then when you give us the opportunity, albeit a reduced amount opportunity, we go, nah, we're not interested in that. I think that's a difficult I think it'd be very difficult to maintain a relationship at that point. I think that's the real downside. Yes, ma'am.
So in the meantime, what happens to Zeph prices?
It continues as always.
Just like
we
always.
fund it. We fund it. It has nothing to do with this funding right now. So, I mean, we would create a strategy if they are involved.
But they're not gonna get any more, so they can.
There's definitely not gonna be an expansion. No, not at $2.5 million. No, it might be a transition, it might be a data collection fee, it might be a one-time participation fee. I'm just throwing things out there right now. My peers have not responded to my request to say, hey, what do you think? And what do you think the models should look like? You know, we could split the money up by population, and if we do that, everybody's involved, but then there might not be enough money for a small rural area who doesn't have adult mobile crisis to start one. The other thing is you gotta commit to sustainability, and it has to be identifiable sustainability, meaning, I think the subtext of that is, but for a Medicaid reimbursement, the boards will cover the expense, the ongoing expense of adult mobile crisis. That's not a lift for us because we do that right now, but it might be a lift for another community who doesn't do that right now. And they might self-select out because of that. I don't know. A lot more to come.
So when we put this in place, does it run parallel with what we're doing now and it's just a subsection? Or do we move everything over to whatever,
So it depends on if we choose to be in or out.
well, assuming we're in?
If we're in, then it has to transition to the new model, it has to transition to the new data. It has to, we have to have all the contiguous counties in place. And I don't have to worry about adult mobile crisis in Wood County. Amanda Kern is the executive, she worries about that, but if she's involved, then that's her responsibility, and so on and so on. So, yeah, it will not only require a conversation with my 9 peers, but once we decide on a model or two, then we're gonna have to go back to the providers where they exist and say, all right, is this something you're willing to do? Because it might not be.
And all that has to be accomplished in the next 30 days.
Indeed. Well, before I left my office and came here to sit down, I actually sent them an email asking 30 days. So it might be shorter than that. But you know, guys, we do this stuff all the time. So we'll get it together and we'll make it happen. It's just a matter of, you know, that term of flying the plane while building it. Elijah does it for a living. So, okay, I'm gonna move off that and just close out my director's report by saying, while she's not in attendance today, and she's probably not watching, wanted to inform you that we have an individual, Michelle Glanville, who's retiring at the end of this month after 26 years of board employment. Most of you probably have never met her. She's been behind the scenes, managing our claims and benefits process. She's our current manager of claims and benefits. She wanted to retire earlier, but she stuck around to make sure Smart Care and her replacement was trained. If you recall, we we hired a temporary person to have that transfer of knowledge. We owe her a big debt of gratitude, that's for sure. We owe her a debt of gratitude for her, not just sticking around and, managing the claims and helping to train her replacement, but she's always been a team player. Years of service, did whatever we've asked, and just wanted to congratulate her on her retirement and thank her for all her years of service. So thank you. That's it.
All right, thank you, Scott. We'll move on then to open session. Mr. Arnold.
I'm still recovering from last week. The point at which that meeting went off the rails and became a train wreck was the point at which Pete Gherkin was reading from the dictionary the term terrorist. And he said, I believe that Homeland Security is a bunch of terrorists. And I believe his exact words were, I respect the Sheriff's Department and I don't want to see their funding commingled with a terrorist organization. It just went downhill from there. So at the same meeting where they asked the taxpayers for more money for 911, they reject $68,000, which the federal government might not be amused, and maybe they won't be giving us money like that in the future. So they will meet next Tuesday. At that time, I believe they will have everything in order. The county auditor will certify the dollar amount, and they will put both the zoo levy and the 911 increase levy on the ballot. If they do not, they've got to shoot for, I believe, February the 3rd, and I believe the deadline is, I'm going to say February the 6th, first week of February. So we'll see what happens with that. As we meet, City Council is voting on this, the most convoluted thing I've ever seen. This is the reorganization. Now, they've been talking about this all during the budget process. It's got all these circles on it. Some of the circles are the size of golf balls, and some are tennis balls, and some are marbles. It's where everybody is on the totem pole. One example of the confusion, I don't even know, don't quote me on this, the Director of Disability Coordination didn't even make it on here. She used to be, her name's Valerie, I can't think of her last name. She used to be a part of the mayor's budget, and her budget was scrutinized and voted on by the council, by the committee of the whole, all the council members. Now it's been shuffled to the Sustainability Committee, and she answers to the Chief of Impact, and she's part of Community Services. It doesn't look like disability is a high priority with them. I testify on a regular basis about disability matters down at City Council. Example, in November, they approved $280,000, which is going to build a wall at the TARTA hub. As you know, TARTA's right next to Vistula, and you get substance abusers there all day long, passing an open container, panhandling. Well, with this new wall, they're going to be pushed off of that parking lot and pushed off of that grassy area, and they're literally going to be pushed over to that very thin sidewalk. Now, that congested area is going to be even more congested, and people in wheelchairs or scooters or walkers, it's going to be a nightmare. And I suggested to the City Council, can you guys run this by the Ability Center, because it's going to make a bad situation even worse. It's hard to get an answer out of anybody over there. But this is what they're voting on tonight, and all through the budget process, which should conclude next week with the mayor and City Council's budget on the 29th, I believe. Nobody knows who answers to what. It's confusion for City Council members and their staff and their department heads, but hopefully they're going to work this out. It's hard to get an answer about anything. Last week, they were once again discussing the possibility that we will have electric vehicles for our police force. I asked the question, across the country, we've had tragedies where the police dogs were left in the back of a car and they died on hot days. But we won't have that in Toledo because we have these special refrigerator units that go in the back of the police car. And even if the officer is out of the car for a long period of time, it protects the dog. I said, will an EV be able to do that to the same degree? Will it run the battery? Nobody could really answer. They said they'll get back with me on that. It's just getting tougher and tougher. The only good thing I can say is the zoning committee is now being reduced from 12 to 9. They were having problems with quorum, so quorum now goes from 7 to 5. Hopefully, they're going to get this all worked out, and they're voting on that tonight, and it's just, the committee structure is all different, and who was on what committee, and who's the chair and who's the co-chair. It's all up in the air, but hopefully they're going to get this worked out. But I still come up with ways to give them new things to do. Great editorial in last week's Wall Street Journal, grave robbery spreads across America. What we have is that across the country, substance abusers are breaking into graveyards. And you can melt down these bronze plaques and get $3 a pound for it. And what they're targeting are military graves. So the states of Minnesota, I believe Massachusetts, they've already taken action. Cincinnati's considering action. But the editorial says local governments need to take a look at this. You want to know how bad this problem is? There was a cemetery in California being broken into on a regular basis. So they brought in guard dogs to protect it. Somebody gave the dogs food laced with sleeping pills and waited until the dogs fell asleep. And then they looted the place. That's how bad it is. The ingenuity of substance abusers never ceases to amaze me. But it encourages local governments to take a look at this. I know what we have in Toledo when this is pre-pandemic. They did pass a law regarding house stripping. That is, if you're using your car to go into houses and abandoned houses and take all the metal and sell it for drugs, they will confiscate your car and they quadruple the fine. That was pre-pandemic, and I never heard any more about it. You know, is it working? Is it a deterrent? I don't know. But across the country, it's the opioid crisis is getting worse and worse. So that's what's a brief example of what's going on at City Council. So, thank you.
With something for the good of the order here? No? Hearing nothing, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.